Some days it feels like my life is just on autopilot. From my morning coffee routine right through to checking emails before bed. And then I realize that's a habit in action. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're sort of pulling back the curtain on these silent architects of our lives. We're going to explore how they shape pretty much everything we do, from our health to how we learn. And honestly, I'm really curious about how we can, take back the reins a bit.
It's so true. Habits are incredibly powerful things, and our core mission here in this deep dive is to really get under the hood, understand why they have such a hold on us, and also to reveal some of the surprisingly common pitfalls that trip us up when we try to change them. And most importantly, equip you with actionable strategies, ones that are actually rooted in cutting-edge research. Our aim is really to help you build those lasting positive behaviors, whether you're, say, gearing up for a crucial meeting, trying to get your head around a new field, or maybe you're just fascinated by how humans tick.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we've pulled from a whole stack of incredible sources, everything from dense psychological studies and neuroscience insights to really practical guides on sustainable living. Our goal, as always, is to pull out those vital nuggets of knowledge that go beyond the surface stuff, help you become truly well-informed, maybe with a few surprising facts, and just enough humor, hopefully, to keep you hooked.
Okay, let's unpack this then. What is a habit, fundamentally? We kind of think we know, but...
Right. At its core, psychologists see it as this deeply ingrained pattern, almost like a mental shortcut, you could say, for how we think or feel or act. It's something your brain learns to do on autopilot after, enough repetition.
And here's a mind blower I came across. Studies have found that it was something like 43%, specifically, of our daily behaviors are done out of habit, often without us even thinking about it, like unconsciously adding a biscuit to your tea, maybe, or using certain phrases all the time. Exactly. Those are habits humming away beneath the surface. And what's really fascinating is why these behaviors get so deeply ingrained. These patterns, they literally become imprinted in our neural pathways through sheer repetition. It's not just about doing something once or twice, it's the consistency. Because these small, consistent actions, they truly compound over time.
The 1% improvement idea.
Yeah, we hear about that a lot, the 1% improvement. But the real insight here is how our brains are wired to reward that consistency, maybe even more than the size of the action itself. It's not about the huge leap. It's about building this sort of unstoppable momentum and those tiny, almost invisible daily votes, as some call them, that our brain recognizes and reinforces. It makes even small acts feel really significant over months or years.
Okay, so repetition is key. Consistency. But what's actually happening, inside our brains that makes those actions stick.
Yeah.
Makes them automatic. That brings us to the habit loop, right?
Right. The habit loop. It's a simple model, but it really helps explain how our brains create and run these automatic routines. It basically has three core parts. First, you've got the trigger. Think of it as the starting gun, the cue that kicks the whole sequence off. It could be a specific time, like morning, or a place, your kitchen maybe, a feeling like stress, or even another action you just finished.
Like seeing the coffee pot triggers the coffee making.
Precisely. Or maybe stress triggers reaching for, an unhealthy snack. So identifying your triggers, that's absolutely step one to understanding why you do what you do. Second is the routine. This is the actual behavior, the action you take when that trigger hits. It could be physical, mental, emotional.
Making the coffee, eating the snack?
Yep. And finally, number three is the reward. This is the payoff, the satisfaction or positive reinforcement that tells your brain, hey, that worked, let's remember this. It reinforces the whole loop.
Trigger, routine, reward. Makes sense. But where does dopamine fit in? I hear about dopamine constantly, that reward chemical. How does it wire in habits specifically?
Dopamine, it's crucial. And here's the interesting thing. It doesn't just spike after you get the reward. It surges when you expect one.
Oh, okay. So it's anticipation.
Exactly. Think of it as the brain's anticipation chemical. Yeah. It drives you to act because you're predicting a reward is coming. This link, this action satisfaction connection, it gets hardwired, essentially, especially in parts of the brain dealing with automatic behaviors like the basal ganglia. You have your sort of baseline dopamine level, right? And then these sharp spikes when the brain predicts a reward, factoring in how big it might be, how likely.
Wow.
And this system is so fundamental, it's often implicated in more compulsive behaviors too. Addiction, for instance. It shows just how powerful that reward prediction thing is for motivation and learning.
That's fascinating, the anticipation drive. Okay, but here's where it gets, let's be honest, really interesting for most of us listening. Why is it so incredibly hard to stick to new habits? Even when we know, logically, They're good for us. We all know we should exercise more, eat better, maybe be more mindful. But the doing it and sticking with it, that's a whole different game. From your research, what's like the single biggest psychological hurdle? The one that blindsides people most often?
That's a huge question. And honestly, there isn't just one, but several common pitfalls crop up again and again. One major one is what I sometimes call the illusion of discipline. What people often label as a lack of discipline is frequently just lack of motivation. Without clear internal reasons, a deeper why that really resonates with you personally, commitment just falters. It peters out. Then there's being half committed, making these weak sort of lukewarm attempts.
Yeah, like I'll try to go to the gym this week.
Exactly. That often leads to quickly caving in, feeling guilty, and that guilt becomes counterproductive. You need full, decisive commitment, even if the first step is tiny. Another classic mistake is simply pushing too hard too soon. Enthusiasm is great, right? But trying to overhaul your entire life overnight, that's a recipe for burnout.
I've done that.
We all have. And linked to that is optimism bias, or sometimes called timing optimism. We consistently overestimate how quickly we can do things and underestimate the challenges. Leads to unrealistic plans, missed deadlines, and then feeling like a failure.
Right.
And then there's a really insidious one, the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is that cognitive bias where basically beginners often wildly overestimate how competent they are.
The peak of stupidity. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
We've all been there, right?
Yeah.
Start something new, think I've totally got this after like a week.
Totally.
And then bam, reality hits you like a ton of bricks.
Exactly. That's the peak of Mount Stupid, as it's sometimes called. You get this initial high confidence with very little actual skill or effort. Then comes the crash, in the valley of disappointment, as you realize, oh, wow, this is actually way more complex than I thought. This beginner's bubble leads to overconfidence, maybe poor decisions, because people quickly form these. The source called it exuberant and error-filled theorizing based on almost no data.
Love it.
And that overconfidence is a major reason people just abandon goals when things inevitably get difficult. Oh, and guilt. Guilt can be useful for spotting bad habits, but too much or mismanaged guilt. Totally counterproductive.
Okay, so whether you're trying to, I don't know, start meditating or tackle a massive goal like living more sustainably, the takeaway seems clear. You absolutely have to be aware of these mental roadblocks. They can totally derail you before you even get going properly.
Absolutely. Awareness is key. But the good news is, once you are aware, there are some incredibly powerful, really actionable strategies you can use. Drawing on insights from habit gurus like James Clear, BJ Fogg. We know that building lasting habits, it's much more about smart design than just gritting your teeth and using willpower. First up, start small. The 2-minute rule. You've probably heard of this, but it's powerful.
2 minutes seems almost too small.
Right. But the goal here is consistency over intensity. Begin with a version of your habit that takes 2 minutes or less. Like if you want to write a blog post, just write the headline in the first paragraph. Want to run? Start with a 5-minute walk.
Okay.
It dramatically lowers that barrier to entry. It makes it almost impossible not to do it. And then the habit can grow naturally from there. It's all about just getting started, building that initial momentum, not being perfect. Second strategy, environmental design. This one is huge.
Shaping your surroundings.
Exactly. Think about it logically. Trying to eat healthier. Don't keep junk food easily accessible on the counter. Make the healthy stuff visible and easy to grab. Want to write more? Create a dedicated space, free from distractions. It's about strategically managing the cues in your environment, reducing the friction for the good habits, and maybe increasing friction for the bad ones.
Like that example of the car horn button, making it harder to press so you think before you honk.
Precisely, making the unconscious conscious. Third, habit stacking or piggybacking. This is super effective because it leverages existing routines.
Linking a new thing to something you already do automatically.
You got it. So if you already make coffee every single morning without fail, maybe you add doing 10 push-ups right after you press the start button. Or, like your example earlier, flossing right after brushing your teeth. It helps your brain connect the new behavior with something that's already locked in. Aids memory, reduces friction. Way easier than trying to wedge in a totally new habit that conflicts with your current flow. Fourth, and this one might be the most powerful, though maybe less obvious, is identity change.
Identity. How does that work?
It's about shifting the focus from just what you want to achieve, the outcome, to who you want to become, the identity. Every time you perform a habit, you're casting a vote, so to speak, for the type of person you wish to be.
So instead of I want to lose weight, it's I am a healthy person.
Exactly. Or I am a writer, not just I want to write a book. When your identity aligns with your habits, this is just who I am, this is what I do, sticking to them long term becomes almost effortless. It feels authentic. Fifth is accountability, creating some external structure to keep you committed.
Telling people what you're doing.
That's one way, a public declaration to friends, family, colleagues. One source mentioned the pain of publicly missing your goal will drive you to achieve it. A bit dramatic, maybe, but there's truth there.
Or an accountability partner. Apps.
All of the above. Habit tracking apps work for some. Getting an accountability partner you check in with. Even hiring a coach. It's about putting some skin in the game, making it harder to just quit quietly. Sixth, feedback and rewards. Track your progress. Celebrate the wins, even small ones.
Like putting a cross on the calendar.
Yeah. Habit tracking provides that visual cue. It's motivating because you see the chain building and you don't want to break it. And it just feels satisfying in the moment to record your success. Research clearly shows people who track their goals are way more likely to improve.
Makes sense.
And while intrinsic motivation, doing it because you want to, is the most powerful driver long term, don't discount external incentives. Even small rewards, maybe even financial ones in some contexts, can actually lead to more realistic goal setting and better performance, especially if you tend towards that Dunning-Kruger overconfidence. And crucially, for long-term goals, celebrating the short-term benefits is vital for keeping motivation high. And finally, strategy number 7, overcoming setbacks with the mountaineering method.
Mountaineering. Okay, intriguing.
Yeah, think about it. Interruptions happen, right? Life gets in the way. It can feel like total failure if you miss a day or two.
Definitely like, oh, well, guess I failed that.
Right. So this method suggests creating anchoring points or resting points within your habit process, like climbers establishing base camps on a mountain. So if you get knocked off course, maybe you get sick or travel or just have a bad week, instead of feeling like you've fallen all the way back down the mountain.
You just go back to the last base camp.
Exactly. You return to the last stable point. Maybe that's going back to the 2-minute version of the habit for a day or two. You reset, regroup, and start climbing again from there rather than abandoning the whole expedition. The key is to plan for failure, expect it, and have a strategy to bounce back quickly. It's not about perfection.
That's brilliant. Really shifts the perspective from failure to just resetting. It really does sound like smart design and strategic resilience are the keys, much more than just pure willpower.
Yeah.
But I wonder, for some listening, does focusing so much on design, on structure, risk making it feel less spontaneous? A bit. Robotic, maybe. How do you balance that structure with just, living authentically, especially when life gets messy?
That's a really important point. And the goal isn't to schedule every second or turn life into some rigid automaton existence. Not at all. It's about making the behaviors you want to do the path of least resistance. So you don't need willpower all the time. When a habit becomes truly automatic, it actually frees up mental energy. It gives you more capacity for spontaneity elsewhere in your life because you're not constantly battling yourself on the basics.
Okay, so the structure serves the freedom eventually.
Exactly. The initial design is like scaffolding when you're building something. You need it at first, but once the structure is solid, you can take it down. As the habit gets embedded, you can absolutely relax the strictness. And that mountaineering method, that's precisely for when life gets messy. It's the built-in plan for imperfect execution. It ensures you always have a way back without judgment.
That makes a lot more sense. Okay, so we've covered building new habits pretty thoroughly. But what about the flip side? Breaking bad habits. That often feels even harder, doesn't it? Because those neural pathways, as you said, are already so deep, so well-trodden. What's the most effective way to tackle those?
You're absolutely right. Breaking old habits often takes more conscious effort than forming new ones, precisely because those pathways are ingrained and have that history of reward attached. But there are definitely effective approaches. One really powerful one is context change.
Changing your environment or situation.
Yes. Big life changes. Moving house, starting a new job, ending a relationship, even something prolonged like the lockdowns. Many experience these things disrupt the old cues and routines. It creates this natural window of opportunity where the old habit triggers might disappear, making it easier to adopt new behaviors. It's like hitting a natural reset button.
Okay, so leverage major life shifts if they happen. What else?
Another key strategy is to swap the routine. This is crucial. Instead of just trying to stop doing the bad habit, which is really hard.
Because you can't form a habit of not doing something.
Exactly. You focus on replacing the routine part of the loop with a different, more positive action. But, and this is important, the replacement should ideally still satisfy some of the underlying need or craving the old habit was meeting.
So if stress makes you reach for a cigarette, find a different stress reliever.
Precisely. Maybe it's 5 deep breaths, a quick walk outside, chewing gum. You're not just stopping smoking, you're replacing the stress relief routine with something else. You have to address the cue and the reward pathway. And finally, tying back to environmental design, you can increase friction and conscious awareness for the bad habit.
Make it harder to do the thing you want to stop.
Yep. Make the undesirable action more difficult, or at least more noticeable. Force yourself to pay conscious attention instead of letting it run on autopilot. If you mindlessly scroll social media, maybe delete the app from your phone's home screen. Put the TV remote in a drawer in another room. Log out of shopping websites after each use.
Introduce little hurdles.
Little hurdles that make you pause and think, do I really want to do this? Remember, you can't form a habit of not doing something. You have to make the doing of the unwanted thing harder, or replace it with the doing of something else.
That's a really crucial distinction. Okay, let's bring this full circle then. How can we apply all these habit principles to tackle bigger, broader goals, specifically thinking about listeners interested in living more sustainably? This feels like it goes beyond just personal tweaking into having a real impact.
Oh, absolutely. This is where these principles can become truly transformative, moving from individual change to collective impact. Applying habit-forming insights is critical for making sustainable lifestyle changes stick. Think about mindful consumption, for instance. It's fundamentally about building habits of intentionality. Choosing products consciously, maybe organic bedding, non-toxic paints for your home. These choices contribute not just to, say, better indoor air quality, but they can foster this deeper sense of sanctuary in your living space, reinforcing the positive feeling. It ties into this idea, as some sources call the underconsumption core, a habit of using only what's truly necessary, avoiding excess, minimizing waste. That requires a massive shift in ingrained buying and disposal habits.
And overcoming the barriers must be huge there too.
Definitely. When we look at overcoming barriers to pro-environmental behaviors like consistently reducing meat consumption, which many people struggle with, habit is a major psychological hurdle. We're creatures of routine. But other barriers pop up too. Things like feeling you lack the right knowledge, or having conflicting goals, maybe wanting to save money versus buying a more expensive eco-friendly option. Even interpersonal relationships can be a barrier, worrying about criticism from friends or family if you change how you eat or shop.
Right, the social aspect.
Yeah. And one source highlighted something really interesting. Seemingly small hassles, just annoying practical problems, like not being able to easily find the right recycling bin, or, the example given, was struggling to find a personnel number needed to sign up for an employee e-bike scheme.
Tiny things that just make you give up.
Exactly. Tiny friction points. Recognizing these allows us to strategically remove them, often using the same habit design principles, making the sustainable choice the easy choice. And that leads to the final point here. Small steps, big impact. Setting achievable, not overwhelming, sustainability goals is key. Things like always remembering your reusable bags, reducing single-use plastic where you can, making small energy-saving choices consistently. These reduce the initial stress and increase satisfaction. These seemingly minute, regular acts, as one source put it, don't just help the planet in aggregate. They also give you a genuine sense of achievement, which boosts your mental well-being and makes you more likely to continue. It builds that positive feedback loop.
It really drives home that so many aspects of sustainable living, from big things like eco-friendly home remodeling or choosing green energy providers, down to daily choices about what you buy or how you commute, all benefit massively from thinking about them through the lens of habits. It's about designing your life, your environment, your routines to make the sustainable choice, the easy choice, the default choice, the rewarding choice. So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that habits really are the fundamental building blocks of our daily existence. They might feel invisible sometimes, operating under the radar. But as we've discussed today, they can absolutely be intentionally shaped, redesigned, not just for our own personal growth, but for a much broader positive impact on the world around us.
Exactly. And maybe here's a final thought for you to mull over, something to take away from this. Given everything we've explored, the mechanics of habit formation, that powerful role of dopamine anticipation, the various psychological hurdles like Dunning-Kruger or simple hassle factors, How might you, listening right now, intentionally start to redesign your environment? How could you leverage social accountability, perhaps? Or really work on shifting your identity so that sustainable choices become not just things you try to do, but deeply embedded automatic parts of your daily routine? And maybe more specifically, what concrete hassles, big or small, can you identify and proactively remove from your path right now to clear the way for a more mindful, more impactful way of living?